The views expressed by our guests in the following video are solely the opinions of our guests and do not necessarily reflect the views and or opinions of the Ollah 7 podcast show. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hello guys, my name is DJ Ollah 7 Owen. Welcome to the Chief A Marshal on your number one podcast in the land, the Ollah 7 podcast. It is your favorite segment on the spot. This is where we sit down and talk to all people from, all walks of life. Artists, politicians, business people, sports stars, comedians, you name them and we have them. Today we are joined by Honorable Agency Gumbo, a lawyer and opposition MP under CCC, for a bold conversation on Zimbabwe's political landscape and the challenges we face and the way forward. With his experience in both law and parliament, he unpacks what's working, what's not, and what's next for the nation. Honorable Agency, welcome to the On The Spot.
Thank you very much, Ollah, for having me on your podcast. I'm quite honored to be here to converse with you and also to converse with the majority of Zimbabweans who follow your very brilliant show.
Thank you so much. It is your first time here.
It is indeed.
Yeah. People will be like, Ollah, please bring politicians. We want to also hear from them. And I'm glad you're here.
Yeah.
I've hosted a couple of politicians on this platform, and now you are on the spot as well. Yeah. Are you ready for this one?
I'm ready, Ollah. I'm ready. Let's have conversation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Before we get into serious business, I want to play a clip. Yenyu Muruku Parliament.
Okay.
Any project has a timeline. Any project has a sequence. You know how much vacancies you are buying. You know from where you are buying. You know when you are going to install them. And you must know when the project is complete. Just we don't know. I can't complain. Give us the specific. Please, honorable honorable, withdraw Jamati. Yeah, kuna minister. Kana muone kufunzwa kana akabvunza ibvunzo yedu Jamaica. Honorable speaker. Honorable speaker. I withdraw
As the honorable speaker, I withdraw. Yeah. That was fun. But sometimes I think you guys you'll be having fun there in the parliament.
It's not really fun, I must say, because sometimes what people see and what turns out to be or to provide some comic relief to the people of Zimbabwe when they watch what happens in parliament is usually a culmination of very tense moments in parliament. It's a culmination of hot, heated moments of debate.
Yeah.
And, for example, the clip you were playing there, all our head stood up to ask from the minister was to ask for the minister to account, to be accountable on a question which every Zimbabwean is asking. Why are our stadiums in the state that they are?
Yeah.
Why do we not have state-of-the-art stadiums? Why does our national team host its home games in Kigali and prevent the people of Zimbabwe, the citizens of this country, the opportunity to go and cheer on their own national team?
Yeah.
It is, these are questions that go to the pride of the nation, Ollah. So when you have a minister dilly-dally or, achitika matame enzira in responding to questions around this very critical key issue, you get worried. So when I stood up to address the minister on this particular aspect, I said to him, look,
exactly.
Give us statistics, give us timelines, give us when things are going to happen. And as a result, you were
thrown out of parliament. You were told to leave. So, in Drangbones, why is it always that you're always thrown out of parliament?
It's a reflection of the kind of politics which we have in this country, which politics we have said must change. The politics of intolerance, the politics of, retention, where you have the ruling party, ZANU PF, and its functionaries in all walks of life. Even its functionaries, in government, its functionaries in the judiciary system, its functionaries even in parliament, who detest the idea of debate, detest the idea of the cross-pollination of ideas. They detest opposition. To just say someone who comes up and exposes their ills, exposes their corruption, exposes their incompetencies, the response that they give to that is never to say, okay, let's listen. Maybe we will learn something from what's being said. For them, the response is shut them down. This is true even in the media world, Ollah. You know this.
Yeah.
The way that the media space is structured and characterized, it's the shrinking of the media space. Journalists are not free to just air out and exercise their true mandates as journalists. The story of Blessed Mhlanga. So what you see when we're being thrown out in parliament is exactly what you as journalists sometimes face in your media spaces. To say, you are in courts simply for exercising your rights as a journalist. We experience that, except now that you see, in parliament, there are what we call parliamentary privileges and immunities. If they could arrest us in parliament, they could, they would. That's what they would want. But so they kick us out many times because we have stood up. And when you stand your ground...
But you mentioned about parliamentary, privileges and immunities. Tell me more about that.
All right. Parliamentary privileges and immunities are the... these are the rights, let me say, that parliamentarians... have in terms of an act of parliament, the Parliamentary Privileges and Immunities Act, which says that when we are in parliament and when parliament is in session and seated in parliament, we are exonerated from criminal prosecution arising from the things that we say in debate, during parliament sessions. So I can speak my mind freely. This so that we allow open debate.
Okay.
You can speak your mind freely. You can mention names and so on and so forth. You can mention, attach someone to a corruption case, attach anyone to, you simply have this freedom that you have, and you cannot be arrested for what you say. Or you cannot be prosecuted for what you say during parliament sitting.
But after parliament.
But after parliament. If you are outside
no
there.
Immunity there.
If you are outside, there's no immunity. If you say what you say when you are at a bar or at a sports club or at a stadium, the law will descend heavily on you, even though sometimes it descends unfairly. Yes.
Honorable Gumbo, you earned Bachelor of Laws degree from University of Zimbabwe.
Correct.
During your time there, it is said you were actively involved in student leadership and notably serving as president of the Students' Union. You find that a number of politicians have studied law. Why are law students drawn to politics? The likes of Tendai Biti, Douglas Monzora, Nelson Chamisa.
Well, I think because law is a discipline, it is a subject that considers or that has at the center of it the question of justice. So normally when you study law, you are trained to start looking at your community from the lenses of justice. And you become more conscious about the injustices that you see in your community, become more conscious about even the processes that are required to deliver justice to the people of Zimbabwe. You become more conscious about how society must be set up and how things must go. So this is probably one of the reasons why you realize that people will evolve their passion. Say, okay, my eyes were closed to this reality, but because of studying law, I'm open to this reality now. And surely this is not the kind of society that I would want. This is not the kind of society that I believe should be open to the people of Zimbabwe. Then you end up in politics somehow. That's how it is, because the study itself is too much of politics. You consider questions of the state, how the state is built, how the state it comes to be, the separation of power issues, constitutionalism. So when you question, because when you're studying from world standards, you're studying from what should be the norm.
And versus what's on the ground.
What's on the ground. So that normally pushes you now to say, okay, why must I not participate in changing the law,
Yeah.
in changing the way that society is set up, and also in pushing that justice be delivered to the people of Zimbabwe. And that is perhaps the reason why you realize many law students end up in politics or find themselves participating, maybe not directly, but even indirectly in politics. But this does not mean that all lawyers become politicians.
Personally, was it the reason why you joined politics?
Yes. I decided from a very long time ago that I would enter into the field of politics. When I was grade 3, I'll just tell you a brief story. When I was grade 3, Ollah, I was crossing the border with my mother in Beitbridge. And I witnessed my mother being harassed by the police officers who were at the last port of exit, coming back into Zimbabwe from South Africa, from Messina, where we'd gone to buy some stuff to sell. And the harassment that I witnessed, as a grade 3 young man, got me so angry that at that very point I decided this cannot be the way police officers treat citizens. We can't have this kind of injustice. I became conscious about the question of justice at that age. And then I decided I'm going to be a lawyer. You understand? Yeah. And then as I was growing up, I realized that, you see, even lawyers, perhaps their powers are limited in as far as determining how society works. I decided also...
How are they limited?
Lawyers. Well, they are limited in the sense that the law is the law. When you are a lawyer, you exercise your mandate within existing laws. So there are certain times where you can't change the law.
Okay.
You understand? You can't change the law. You've got to go practice the law as it is. You can do, yes, of course, there's what we call judicial activism, where lawyers can agitate for reform, they can go and challenge certain pieces of legislation and so on and so forth. But the lawmaking process is a preserve of politicians. It's a preserve of parliament. You understand? So that's why I'm saying I realize the limitations around just being a lawyer. So as a lawyer, I'm a justice practitioner. But as a politician, I have an opportunity to participate in creating a just community, creating just laws.
I get you. Now that you mentioned about your grade 3, memories, Honorable, most people know you as a lawyer and MP. Now, before all this, who was Agency Gumbo growing up? Tell us a bit about your background, your roots.
Okay. Well, I grew up in a small but vibrant border town called Beitbridge. This is where I was born. And growing up, I come from a very humble background, from a very modest family setup, where it wasn't necessarily about wealth, but there was emphasis. We were a wealthy family in terms of a bond, family bond, family values, family culture, standing up for each other and so on and so forth. So I grew up in Beitbridge, did my primary school in Beitbridge. From Beitbridge, I went to Masvingo, Lundi Christian High School. This is where I did my high school. And, this became my high school days are the times that I started discovering myself more because we had strong-rooted Christian beliefs, Christian teachings, and which also taught us about pursuing purpose. And as I was there, I was always this very vocal young man, but he grew up to become, I was then made a prefect. And then that's the first time I interacted with Parliament when I was in high school. Okay. Because I became a junior parliamentary. A junior member of Parliament, and then became a junior minister also. And started interacting with the institution and the culture of parliament, government, how everything is set up. So when we were just in our A-level, we started speaking about national questions. Speaking about national issues, speaking, the passion being, I'm inspired by...
What were you talking about then, if you remember?
I remember those days because we would learn and listen to the leadership of the then student movement leaders. We would learn of Len Mojongwes, we would learn of Nelson Chamisa's stints, the Atham Tambaras, and so on and so forth. And started realizing that students played a critical role in terms of contributing to national discourse. And the kind of conversations we would have. I started speaking against ZANU PF when I was just Form 5. Yes. Why? Because we would see food in the dining hall in boarding school. And we realized that this is not the problem of the principal at the school. This is an economy problem. So we question those things. When you go back home, Ollah, I used to help my mother raise fees for us to go to school through selling fuel.
Okay.
We would go buy fuel in South Africa. I would be, when my other colleagues were playing around and, you know, doing what young...
And you're busy selling fuel.
I was busy selling fuel because my mother would tell me, because of things are fuel, you can pay. So
was it black market fuel?
It was black market fuel.
Yeah.
So because of that interaction at that level, I started understanding how bad the economy had become.
Yeah.
Why are we selling fuel in 5-liter bottles? Why are we selling fuel in 20-liter bottles? And why are my brothers, why are my relatives here not getting jobs and they are all doing this kind of informal existence?
Yeah.
So this tells you, when you go back to school now, you're in boarding school, because you are raising your fees.
Yeah.
When people are complaining with beans, you understand that it's an economy problem.
Yeah.
And it's not your principal who runs the economy. It is the government that must deliver a fair and credible and successful economy to allow for the development of its citizens. So we would speak about these things.
Yeah.
We would speak about these things at a very young age. That's the background and the history, perhaps, that got me to
where you are
now. The post that I am in and pursue the things that I pursue up to today.
Great. Honorable Gumbo, you've now had some time in Parliament and representing Hatcliff.
Yes.
Looking back, what would you say have been the most significant contributions and interventions so far? What are you most proud of?
Ollah, I must say to you that the thing that I'm proud of most is that I have tried to utilize the voice that was given by the people of Zimbabwe through an electoral process to say you've been elected, you have become MP. But the election to become MP has come with its fair share of challenges because we have not then been given a fair platform to execute the true mandate that the people of Zimbabwe voted us to do or to execute. The space, democracy is not a theory. Democracy is a practice. It's a practice which must allow the divergence of ideas and allow that government be held accountable for its actions, and it must allow that people who become MPs, people who are elected by the generality of Zimbabweans, execute the role that they were elected to execute. But that's not been the case in this particular tenure of Parliament. That's not been the case in the sense that there has been a wanton attack on the opposition in this country by the retentionist ZANU PF regime. We have witnessed the mutilation of ethos and principles and values of democracy in this country. You know well of the story of a lot of our MPs who were recalled when we just got through the election. We had a great team of MPs who were elected by the people of Zimbabwe. And when we got into the election, we were infiltrated. We saw the rise of the guy called Sengezo Tshabangu. And then through the agency of ZANU PF and through the agents of the state, he started recalling a lot of MPs that were known to be MPs who would deliver a fierce opposition to ZANU PF government. You would remember, if you can go back in time when we just got into Parliament, there were a lot of these disturbances in Parliament. These disturbances, at one point all of us were kicked out of Parliament by riot police at the instruction of Mudenda, Speaker of Parliament. And that was the beginning of the onslaught against opposition MP. But that was the beginning also from a broader perspective of the attack on the alternative movement. Why attack on the alternative movement, Ollah? It's because the alternative movement has maintained its stance to say no illegitimate process through an election, no illegitimate election, no election which is not fair and credible can produce a legitimate government. So because of that position, we were stubborn and we maintained that, and we still maintain that, to say the problems that Zimbabwe is facing now is because of an illegitimate process, because illegitimate processes produce illegitimate results.
True.
So they cannot be, we cannot say that we have a legitimate government now because we say we did not have a legitimate election. Everyone knows what happened, the scandals around the electoral process, so on and so forth. Everyone knows those kind of things. So it has been consistent fighting, Ollah. This has been persistent fighting in Parliament, fighting against ZANU PF, fighting to preserve the democratic space. We were fighting the PVO bill, fighting to open up the media space, fighting to have political and economic and security sector reforms in this country. So that's what we have been up and about doing. So it's not, it's not that we are, we are at a place that we can say we are proud of the nature of the democracy that we are participating in. We are not.
Yeah.
But we understand also that we are soldiers that ought to fight to ensure that the future of this country opens up to democratic process.
Honorable, you mentioned that it's not legitimate government.
Yes.
Right? Why are you in Parliament right now? Yet it's not legitimate and the process was not legitimate as well.
Okay.
Like you said, it won't bring good results. So why are you in Parliament?
All right. So we are in Parliament when I speak of the legitimacy. The legitimacy is the legitimacy of this government. So when we were elected by the people of Zimbabwe, the people of Zimbabwe went out in their numbers and they voted for MPs.
Yeah.
They went out in their numbers and they voted for Nelson Chamisa. And the process towards the election, the process of the election itself was marred with a lot of controversies. You know how this voter suppression, voter intimidation, and so on and so forth, which were part and parcel of the electoral process. We stood up to say, yes, we have been sworn in. That's why we did not even go to the opening ceremony of Parliament as MPs of the opposition, because we were resisting. So yes, this electoral process might have produced these MPs, but this electoral process was flawed. Let's go back and revisit the electoral process. How the results were tabulated, how the results were transmitted, and how we got to the presidential vote itself was marred with serious controversies. But we went to Parliament at the instruction of the party. So, okay, let's go to Parliament. Let's go there and emphasize the need for key institutional reforms. So Parliament is a platform that we must utilize to push for the key reforms that are required for this country to move forward. Parliament is again the platform where we must voice out our concerns around the legitimacy of our electoral processes in this country. And we have an opportunity to amend what laws require to be amended, to reform what laws require to be reformed. You cannot reform laws from the street, You cannot reform laws from your office.
We have heard that before. We have heard
Yes.
that before, even from the previous administration.
Correct.
Your MPs were also saying we're fighting for reforms. So far, it's been 2 years or almost 2 years in Parliament. What reforms have you made so far?
There have not been any key reforms. Because when we talk of reforms in the context of the future of our electoral process, these are electoral reforms.
Yeah.
To ensure that we deliver a free, fair, credible election, there must be transparency, accountability, and fairness within the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission's mandates. We talk of institutional reforms in the sense of security sector reforms. The police, the soldiers, and all security agencies must exist to provide security of the vote and security of the voter, not necessarily to provide security of or the power of one political party. We talk of media reforms. These are required. So we agitate for these things. We speak about these things, and we have grown to know and learn that the success we envisage is going to be incremental. It's going to be incremental. It's not going to be like a revolution which is just abrupt. It's going to be incremental. Slowly we must push for reform. Slowly we must push for a change of laws that allow for everyone to
Do you think you're doing enough in Parliament in terms of pushing for those reforms?
Yes. I think we are doing the best that we can do. But obviously there's room for more that can be done. The resistance that we face every time and again is a non-reformist government. Because remember, when we talk of the state, there is Parliament and then there's the executive. These are two, and the executive is responsible for the implementation of government policy. So any institutional reform which we might want, we push it in Parliament, yes. But at the end of the day, there must be a political will from those who are in the executive. There must be political will from the president, political will from his ministers, and then political will from the MPs within ZANU PF. So you realize that we also have this numbers problem, where we have MPs from the opposition who are in Parliament. They can vote in a particular way. and this is exactly with this current parliament.
Yeah.
This is why ZANU PF became so hell-bent on diffusing the influence of the opposition parliamentarians to say, okay, now we have recalled your MPs. We are going to put MPs who are seated in that August House at the benevolence of ZANU PF, who are seated there because they were appointed, they were forwarded, so and so forth, at the benevolence of ZANU PF.
So you are saying from number of MPs we could part when you are in parliament right now, not all of them are standing for Triple C.
No, not all of them. Remember, I spoke about the recalls that happened.
Yeah.
We had MPs who were recalled. And the MPs who were recalled by Sengezo Tshabangu, most of them, were proportional representation MPs.
Yeah.
So they were, when Tshabangu recalled our MPs, he replaced them with his own MPs.
Yeah.
And some of our MPs were recalled were barred by the courts from participating in the by-elections, allowing also that one or two Sengezo Tshabangu MPs were also elected into parliament.
Yeah.
So it's not the entire caucus of the opposition that subscribes to the original ethos of the 2023 August elections, Triple C, that won the mandate in the hearts of the people, that was led by Nelson Chamisa. So we have a divided caucus in parliament in the opposition.
So from your own point of view, how many are you? Party Isiria Tshabangu.
Right. This was Party Isiria Tshabangu. We have in the National Assembly 51 out of 88. And then we have in the Senate 14 out of 21. So those are the stats.
Yeah.
But now you must understand one thing, that our caucus, this one that we say is the original caucus of the Triple C, has the majority. The caucus, the other caucus, is even divided between Sengezo Tshabangu and Washman Ncube.
Okay,
you understand?
The other
one.
Okay.
Yeah. In their
confusion.
Minority, they are divided.
Right.
Tshabangu.
Okay.
Confusion. You understand? Well, that's why I said we represent the original caucus of the Triple C, which was elected by the people in 2023.
So who is your leader?
August. Our leader is Nelson Chamisa. That was our presidential candidate. This is the guy around which we congregate.
During the election,
yes,
Nelson Chamisa was your leader.
He was our president.
Now that he's no longer, the president of any political party.
Yes.
Who is your leader now?
Right now, the Triple C that our caucus is led by Jameson Timber. Jameson Timber was through a resolution of the Citizens National Assembly, which was the highest decision-making board of the party when we went to the election.
Yeah.
Presided over by Nelson Chamisa. So when Nelson Chamisa did his strategic retreat, the Citizens National Assembly gathered at a meeting and made a resolution to say, okay, whilst we prepare for the decisions that our president will take, because Chamisa remains our president, he remains our leader.
Okay,
he might have withdrawn and strategically retreated from the institution of the party, but he remains our leader because what he represents is what we follow.
How is he your leader when he's not representing any political party? Yet you're Triple C.
Yeah. Well, the challenge is
he wrote a letter which was all over social media.
Yeah. So when people say we are led by Nelson Chamisa, what they are simply expressing, Ollah, is that we believe in the ethos and values and principles and the vision which is embodied in the person of Nelson Chamisa. So when we talk of Nelson Chamisa so much, we don't talk of him because he's a handsome looking guy or so and so forth. We talk of him because the propositions that he has given in terms of the future of this country, in terms of how this country must be governed and how this country must move forward, are what we follow in him. So leadership is not a preserve of a position in an institution.
Yeah.
Leadership is a preserve of, do you have a vision that people can align with and align to and follow? So this is where we are with NC. To say, okay, we believe in the vision. Because remember, he says, I've taken a back step from the institution. You understand?
Yeah.
But he's not taken a back step from his role as a generational leader. He's not taken his
Is he politically active?
Well, it depends with what you consider politically active. Because that, again,
okay, are you guys engaging
Of course.
with Nelson Chamisa as parliamentarians and saying, okay, our leader, give us the direction, and he's giving you direction back door.
Like I've said before, to say the Citizens National Assembly gathered and said we are going to make a decision as to who will be, in the interim sense, be running affairs and coordinating the processes that we have got to do. We have elected MPs, we have elected councillors.
Yes.
We run about over 30 urban councils in the country.
Yeah.
So we are a party in government. You understand? At local government level. But we're also a party in government at the level of parliament, so on and so forth. So we've got to have some coordination around how we conduct our programs, around the messaging, and around how we represent the people of Zimbabwe. So the decision was made to say, okay, we're going to have a team of 10 representatives who come from each of the provinces of Zimbabwe.
Yeah.
We're going to have a team of leadership who form what we call the administrative bureau of the party. So that bureau was put under the leadership of Jenson Timber. So now there is a structure to how we are doing our things. There's a structure and the method to how we are conducting our processes. Right now, meetings are happening all over the country. People are meeting, people are being organized, people are being mobilized properly towards, of course, the big thing that Nelson Chamisa is going to come with.
Okay.
Towards the future, towards the new, towards the big announcement.
Back? Is he coming back to active politics? Like, I heard you saying big thing coming.
Yeah, he's not, Nelson Chamisa has not left politics, contrary to what a lot of people would think. You understand? He's not left politics. He's not left politics. He's, go back to his resignation letter. He doesn't say, I have abandoned politics. He says to the people of Zimbabwe, the thing that we were with, the thing that we started well, has become contaminated. And I am the primary target. You understand?
Yeah.
So strategically, he's had to retreat from that contamination. He had to retreat from it. But he says in the same message, you understand, that I will be announcing to you the next steps, the way forward. So that tells you something. From his own resignation announcement, it tells you that this is a guy who is definitely going to come back with an announcement.
So that will be a new political party.
Look, let's not get into. Let's allow him to come back and deliver to the people of Zimbabwe. But what I must tell the people of Zimbabwe is that they must maintain vigilance and hope. A lot of people believe in Nelson Chamisa. This is a man who has garnered over 2.2 million votes from the people of Zimbabwe.
Yeah.
He has the popular support, and the people of Zimbabwe believe in Nelson Chamisa. And I must encourage the people of Zimbabwe to say, do not despair, do not lose hope. The person you believe in, the things that you believe in, the leadership that you see in Nelson Chamisa is the leadership that is going to deliver Zimbabwe. And that leadership.
I will get back to that.
Okay.
But Panenya it's because of this 2030 thing, and also you guys being in parliament and not representing in courts, or not representing the will of the people. And some are even saying you guys went into parliament kuti mumbo so to say, Are you not there in parliament kumbondo toro ma benefits?
You see, when you started, you properly acknowledged I'm a lawyer. I think it's more rewarding to be in the law profession. It's a more rewarding enterprise than being in parliament. It's more rewarding to be in business than to be in parliament. You'll be surprised if I tell you right now, Ollah, that you are probably way off, better off than most of people in parliament.
What do you mean?
I mean it. To say, look, there is not so much in terms of remuneration that people get in parliament. I suppose I need to correct this view, because a lot of people think when you go to parliament, you become so rich.
But we're seeing rich MPs.
You see rich MPs.
They get into parliament poor, they get out rich.
Yes, I don't dispute the fact that sometimes people fall victim to the trinkets and to the trappings of power. to say sometimes you get into office and people use money to get their way, so on and so forth. But in as far as direct benefits that people get from Parliament, it's not much. The salary that MPs get, is under $1,000.
Yeah.
Under, way under actually. If we go by the way that money is traded in town, the MPs are earning under $600 as a salary.
Under $600?
Yes. You understand?
But you get allowances which are way more than the salary.
Listen, the allowances that MPs get are not... right now, as I speak, I will tell you for a fact that MPs have not received their salary, not received their allowances. Allowances, they're all back paid allowances of plus or minus 8 months. No allowances has been paid to a single MP. You understand? So it's not a job really that you go to say, I want to go and make money. Outside of the car that you get, which is a condition of service, and if you're a Harare MP like myself, I don't even get much fuel.
Yeah.
Because you get 20 liters a day for you to travel between Parliament and your constituency and your house and so on and so forth. So there is not so much that we can say you go to Parliament to get rich.
Yeah.
You understand? In fact, for some of us who were doing way better before going to Parliament, we have starved our day-to-day income generating work. And we are even poorer. Do you understand? Yeah, we are poorer than we were when we went there.
But listen, Honorable, a few weeks back, it was announced that the Ministry of Local Government allocated 70 residual stands to members of Parliament across Harare, Goromonzi and Zimba. It is said that the stands are a one-time non-monetary benefit under MP's conditions of service.
Yes.
So, Honorable Gumbo, can you just clarify whether you personally received one of the residential stands recently allocated to the MPs?
No. I did not receive a residential stand. I was not on the list. I'm not even quite privy to the process itself that led to that list being produced and how people were selected and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So let me just also talk a bit about that, because we also owe it to the people of Zimbabwe to educate and to clarify certain issues, to say, okay, we have a problem when government does not act transparently. And this is what the people of Zimbabwe don't like. People of Zimbabwe want things that are transparent and open. Correct every MP, it is a resolution of Parliament that was made around 2013, 2014, to say all members of Parliament will get a non-monetary benefit. This was in response to parliamentarians during that time protesting against the low salaries and the low allowances. So, but look, we don't get enough considering the work that we do as Parliament. We are getting paid close to nothing.
Nothing, yeah.
And then Parliament said, okay, because they were unable to raise MP salaries at that time, the decision was then made to say, okay, but we can then give you a non-monetary benefit, which is a residential stance, once in a term. And we give you another non-monetary benefit that you get is a vehicle, once in one term.
Yeah.
So these are benefits that parliamentarians will ordinarily get under their contract.
Yeah.
But the challenge that arises, Ollah, particularly with the issue that the Zimbabwean and so on and so forth that became contentious to the public is, number one, how these processes are not processes which must be politicized. They must not be processes and benefits which are given in order to push a particular unconstitutional and unaccountable process.
Yeah.
We must not push to say, okay, we're going to give you a stand so that you support us to push an unconstitutional process or agenda. That's what we are against.
Because on the ground, people are saying these stands, these residential stands, were given even to the opposition MPs to support the 23rd agenda. What's your take on that? Because people are saying that's the move. So
Yes.
I want to ask you, are you saying those who were on the list, that from Guinea, Tshabangu, or the Welsh, or from your party, or you're just saying it was just for everyone?
No, it was not. That's why I said earlier I'm against processes which are not transparent, processes which are not done to the satisfaction of the people of Zimbabwe. Because at the end of the day, we are all accountable to the people of this country. So when that issue of the stands came up. Number one, it came up at a very wrong time.
Yeah.
Because it's coming up at a time where there's contentious debate around the question of the constitutional amendments, which ZANU PF is trying to push. They come out at a time where there is an onslaught against the opposition movement. And it now seems like, because the people that were on that list of residential stands are not people who are aligned to our original caucus. Yes, they're not.
They're not, okay.
They're not.
All right.
There are people who are aligned to Tshabangu. There are people who are aligned to Washington Ngube. These were the people on that list.
Okay.
So how that list came to be, a lot of MPs were in the dark. We only, I also learned of it when I woke up in the morning. I'm checking my Twitter. I'm checking my social media. I'm realizing, there are people queuing for Senate, but who's selected these people? And how did this happen?
Exactly.
What was the criteria used? So you then...
Did you then ask that in Parliament?
Yes, that the question was raised.
And what was the response?
There was no response. No response has come yet. We are yet to get a response from the Minister of Local Government and from Parliament itself to say, okay, we are going to utilize this criteria in order to give this benefit and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
But and it's politics that's at play also.
But given a chance, would you accept that residential stand?
Given a chance, would I accept that residential stand? It depends, Paula. It depends. I'm not hungry for a stand. I'm not hungry for these things. I can work for these things by myself. For me, it will depend on, number one, what is the condition of livelihood for the people that I represent? Number two, what conditions are being attached to me receiving this benefit? Yes, when I went into Parliament, I was given a contract to read. You understand?
Yeah.
Which speaks of that. But I will not participate as long as it is done to achieve, or as a process to achieve my support towards an ill agenda, to support 2030. If I have to lose even my salary, and even if they have to take my car, they can take it. But what we will not do is to support an agenda which is anti-people, an agenda which is anti-constitution, an agenda which is anti the ethos and principles that we represent. 2030
agenda aside, would you accept the residential stand?
2030 agenda aside, will I accept the residential stand? It's a yes and no answer also. I'll say it's a yes and no. I'll say it's a yes and no because, number one, I told you, when I read the contract I got, the contract spoke to the residential stand. So there's a residential stand that's going to be given. You understand? But under the current existing circumstances in this country, I'm not going to take that stand.
Okay.
I'm not. Under what we are experiencing in this government, under what we're experiencing with this parliament, I'm not going to take that residential stand because taking that residential stand, for me, personally, I'm not speaking for other MPs. For me personally, until and unless we address the problems that Parliament has faced, until and unless we address the issues of constitutionalism, the issues of legitimacy and so on and so forth, I would not want to benefit outside this sham. I would not want to benefit from this, incredible circumstance and situation obtaining in the country, in Zimbabwe right now.
Yes. Okay, speaking of MPs' conditions, of service, can you clarify to us in a very simple terms, what are the roles of an MP? It's very unfortunate that tikawana Hatcliff Queen potholes mu road. Toti problem MP akasanwa kunhamo unaenda kunhamo problem afuti MP. So tell us the role of the MP in simple terms.
The MP has three key roles which are provided for in the Constitution. The first one is the role of legislation. An MP, all laws in this country are eventually laws enacted by parliamentarians. So parliamentarian is the legislative role. They go to parliament kunogadzira mutemo wenyika. So vanhu pavanosangana na MP wavo kumusha uko, what they must do, Ollah, is to push the MP around legal and legislative reforms. To say MP pamunoenda ku parliament pane mutemo umwe watakapiwa uya wekuti tinofanira kudai ati endai munotaura kuti mutemo hauchabudi. You understand?
Yes.
So when you judge your MP according to whether or not your MP has managed to go to parliament and speak around legislative reforms, because ndo basa rama MP kugadzira mitemo yenyika. Saka mukanzi hanzi pamwe maakunzi parodi poga usati wadarika mugwagwa wakadai unofanira kubhadhara mari dzakati kana ukanzi kuna mutemo wakadaro, It's the MP's job to go and say the people of Zimbabwe no longer want these laws.
Yeah.
Let's change these laws. So that's legislative role, to make the law. Number two, the MPs have a role called oversight role. Oversight role is that it is MPs who must ensure that government is held to account. So government is the implementer of policies. Government runs the country. But they mustn't run the country under the principle of separation of powers, and also in respect of issues of accountability. They must not run the government without being held accountable by Parliament.
Yeah.
So my MP bas around my government department also are at constituency level. Are they executing their function and mandate according to the will and the aspirations of the people of Zimbabwe, but most importantly according to the law? So they play an oversight role. That's why in Parliament you see us
Yeah.
Tete have a minister.
Okay.
That's part of the MP playing oversight role. Because we have what we call question and answer segment every Wednesday in Parliament, where ministers come to answer questions from MPs. So when you observe your MP wherever you are, to say, oh, MP wangu,
makangonyarara musi kumbotaura tine vamwe MP akadoti
hatomuzivi and saka MP basa rake ndiri kumesha kuti government is held accountable. So all these things that we complain about, we have asked about them. If I talk about electoral reforms, I have stood up in Parliament to quiz the Minister of Justice and quiz other relevant ministers around questions of elections, around questions of rigging, around questions of so and so forth. Corruption, rise to speak against the corruption that government is overseeing.
Yeah.
Then the last role is a representation. You understand?
Yeah.
MP mumiriri wa vanhu. Where does the MP represent you? The MP is the carrier of the constituency's voice to Parliament on any national issue. That's why we have in Parliament and in terms of Parliament procedures, time yema questions of national interest. You understand?
Yeah.
To say we have this time that we can raise any question as long as it affects the interests of the people that we represent.
Yeah.
So you must be the voice of your constituents. Constituency mukanzi maita dambudziko rinoda government intervention. The person who must carry that problem to government is the member of Parliament. For example, MP. I'll tell you one thing. I was elected by the people of Hatcliff. Hatcliff constituency it covers not just the Hatcliff residential side that you know, that it starts from the Chess, Mount Pleasant, Vinona, Helensville, Broad West, and then Hatcliff.
Yeah.
So I have one side of my constituency, which is affluent.
Yeah.
But I have another side of my constituency which is not so affluent. Rather, ghetto. Yeah. So in I go there, the roads are not good. The roads are bad.
Yeah.
You understand? They're in a very bad state, and they are a demonstration of the incapacities and competencies of ZANU PF's government. So my job now is not necessarily to go and fix those roads. Because I might not have the financial capacity.
What is your role?
My role then is to take this issue of the roads, like I did, to Mona and say, Minister Mona, if you ask Mr. Mona, he will tell you today that Hatcliff too easy. And so on. Usually, Alps Road, they've not completed it. So he knows, I go to him and say, Minister Mona, there's the Alps Road issue. You need to go and complete it.
Yeah.
Mr. Mona, there's this Main Street issue. You need to go and fix it. So as a result, the minister then promised to say, okay, Hatcliff, we will deal with about 3 main roads.
3 main roads, yeah.
Yeah. So I've done my job. That's the job of the MP, to go with the concerns of the people to government and say government must come to
implement. Vanonyunyuta kuti ma-MP vakangovhoterwa vanobva vatsakatika vachatobatika vachatooneki muma-constituency mavo. So what's your view on that perception, and how important is consistent presence in the constituency?
Consistent presence in the constituency is what every MP must achieve.
Yeah.
Why? Because remember, all the 3 roles you play in Parliament, you play those roles on the basis of the aspirations of the people that voted for you. That's why we have constituency MPs. You are the voice of Zimbabwe. You are the voice of the people that you represent.
Yeah.
So you can't represent people that you are never in touch with. It's not possible. You can't because you don't know the problems if you're not there. How can you be an MP So it becomes difficult for you to accustom yourself.
So are you present in your constituency?
Yes, Ollah, I am present in my constituency. Obviously, and this is, I don't want to come here and claim perfection. There could be other people who say,
exactly.
But whispers. But you see, when MP,
exactly.
So I try to spread myself personally. I try to say, okay, I'm this side, I'm with the churches. At one point, I'm gathering with the soccer and the sports youths. I'm gathering sometimes with the youths. I'm with them. I'm also gathering with residents associations. I'm also dealing on a more frequent basis with issues to do with my cooperatives, my land barons, and then she fight now every time in my constituency at Hatcliff. I try and deal with those things. So that's the kind of presence that we must be in.
And I'm talking to advocates. Agency Gumbo and a Triple C member of Parliament for Hatcliff, and we are discussing various issues here on the spot. Honorable, during the 2023 general elections, you were embroiled in a double candidate chaos. In fact, yours was one in many of these, double candidates controversies. Some say this scandal exposed serious weakness in Triple C's internal vetting and communication system. Do you agree? And what exactly went wrong behind the scenes?
All right. I'll debunk that perspective that this was an internal issue. It was not an internal issue. For example, the candidate who stood as a double candidate in my constituency was sponsored by FAZ. And FAZ was an appendage of ZANU PF, political and electoral rigging mechanisms and system. It was not an internal issue. The candidate who came to contest on the same ballot as myself under the same party name is unknown to our party structures, is unknown to our people in the political party. So it was not an internal issue. Rather, the double candidates that we saw around the country, actually, most of them, if not all of them, I think there was only one where there was a slip up, but that candidate quickly withdrew. You understand? But in all the other candidates were sponsored by ZANU PF to disrupt electoral victory in my MPs.
Didn't you have counter mechanisms?
So this, the double candidate scenario of Ollah speaks to the need to reform the nomination process. It is part and parcel of our demands for electoral reform in this country. It exposes not the political party, but the institution of ZEC itself. It exposes the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission and its nomination court system.
But my question is, didn't you guys have counter mechanism to counter these FARs and all these claims that you are making here?
No, to counter FARs. No, we countered FARs, of course, through ensuring that we embed ourselves within the people. We don't believe in creating rogue institutions and rogue operations to disrupt constitutional electoral processes. We don't believe in that kind of politics. That's not our nature of politics. So why would we want to go and create double candidates for ZANU PF? We don't believe in that. We believe in allowing ZANU PF to go to the electoral process, to go to the people, because the people of Zimbabwe must not be fraud in how someone is elected to office. We don't believe in that kind of politics.
Some blame it on Berikamwana, strategy. What's your take on that?
Berikamwana strategy is a process which is not unique to Zimbabwe. It's not unique to just the political party electoral process that we undertook. This was a political decision made within the party around how we should elect our MPs. There is no better, more transparent system in a vote than just saying we have seen the people that like you. In fact, the times that we used to do our secret ballot voting process for our internal elections, people would complain that no marigira ningi. But apaka kana wantu ungati warigirwa here wewe. Kana wanga une vanhu ka. Vanhu vakutefara kuwaona apa.
So do you think it was a good democratic process?
I think it was a democratic process, good democratic process. Did we learn some lessons from it? Yes, we did.
What lessons do we need to draw from that?
Do we need to improve on it? Yes, we will require to improve on our internal candidate selection system. But this is, any organization improves from its own experiences. So the complaints, if people have complaints, we have listened to these complaints.
But didn't that make you lose your most powerful MPs, the likes of Tendai Biti and et al.?
I don't want to say that we lost these MPs. You see, democracy, that's the beauty of democracy. Democracy allows the people to decide and to determine. It's democracy. Sometimes, Tony Blair will say in a book that it says democracy and its calamities. You understand? To say, yes, democracy doesn't always yield the best foot or the best person forward. It yields the most popular person. But that's what we must observe and that's what we must respect. He who is elected by the people is we who must go and represent the people, because you are representing the people that elected you. But to say we have lost you is another statement altogether, because it's not the only platform of contributing to the political success of this country. Parliament is not the only platform of contributing to national growth and national development and moving this country forward. People like Tendai Biti outgrew Parliament. He made his contribution fair and fine. We respect that contribution, and that contribution will forever go into history as part of the best. But Tendai Biti is still and can still contribute to the growth and the future of this country. And remember what Nelson Chamisa said about Tendai Biti, asked the same question outside the High Court after nomination court. He was standing there with Tendai Biti and said Tendai Biti is bigger than Parliament. You understand? So we have certain MPs whom the public obviously would have wanted to see in Parliament. But I must also charge the public and say these are individuals who can play a role in the future of this country, even outside the institution of Parliament. Parliament is just but one arena through which we are executing the struggle for democratic transition in this country. But we have other arenas. Tendai Biti will still come to your show here and deliver immaculately on the question of the economy. And immaculately on the question of how we must resolve the Zimbabwean question. Tendai Biti will still be able to go and teach and capacitate younger generations and groom the younger generation into becoming fine politicians and fine lawyers and so on and so forth. So there are various platforms that these people are contributing towards. So they were not lost in the struggle. They just did not get to Parliament.
Fair point. Honorable, the CCC has consistently maintained that the 2023 general elections were not free and fair, credible and stuff. From your position on the ground, what evidence or experiences support the claim?
Right. Number one, the vote, there's the pre-election phase, the election phase, and then the post-election phase. So in summary, I will just touch on these three. Pre-elections, we witnessed a clampdown on opposition campaign programs. You would remember that even our launch, we intended to launch our campaign in Bindura, and that was stopped by the police. We had a record number of over 90 rallies banned, over 90 rallies and meetings banned by the police from happening across the country. But we've
also heard ZANU PF they also have their own rallies banned as well.
I challenge ZANU PF to tell us which one of their rallies was banned. ZANU PF conducted its programs, conducted its rallies without even police notification, without even police clearances. That's how they've acted. I challenge them today to bring here and say, okay, we have this rally banned, here's the evidence from the police at that time. There was never such a scenario. We spent a lot of time in courts during the campaign season litigating that our meetings be allowed. So as a result, we ended up having a lot of our meetings and a lot of our rallies abandoned. We ended up just focusing on the small group campaigns, door-to-doors, and so on and so forth. And yet, the election periods must open up to everyone. So that's one area, one issue, and one aspect. Also, I want to challenge you to go and check media presence of the opposition. during the campaign period. This is pre-election. The law is clear that the media, state media, must open up to all participants.
Yeah.
So we witnessed a lot of ZANU PF material on state radio, on state media, ZBC, and so on and so forth. And even the free media, which would want to push the narrative of the opposition or push both narrative equally. You know, somehow there was a clampdown against those journalists and against those editors, so on and so forth. So this is pre-election. That on its own,
but
is evidence.
It is believed that also the CCC, the opposition, mairambidze mimi majournalists achitaura ano mimi muri bias so don't come.
That's not correct.
And apo pasauye.
That is
sometimes muchinva to kuma interviews ZBC and other institutions say guys come and say no we're not coming there.
That is propaganda.
Then machemira.
No, that is propaganda. That is propaganda. You know, we have known in this country the editorial policies that run the state media. You know, state media is run through the agents of an. Madanda is there. So
why would you say that?
No. So because you see, if you preside over the media. The media arm of government, if you preside over the Ministry of Information, you must understand that part of your job is to allow free speech. Part of your job is to allow open airwaves, to allow, especially during campaign periods, to allow for all political parties to get fair coverage. So any contrary information which comes and says, look, they refused is propaganda, is lies that they're propagating to protect themselves from against this allegation, because they can't answer to it because it's there. It's where if you say we allowed CCC to come, show us agency we are with a interview demonstrate to us who you called and who refused. We ended up having to play our jingles on WhatsApps, on Facebook, and so on and so forth, because a lot of media houses would be, afraid. Even we have friends with journalists who work in these institutions.
Yeah,
they themselves, when we talk to them and say,
exactly.
There's an invisible power somewhere there.
Invisible power.
Then let's talk about the election itself. This election was, characterized by one thing that was most evident: voter suppression in Harare. You know of the story ukuthi vanhu vari kuma election, vanhu vakatomira muqueue yekuda kuvhota, kunzi ballot hapasina ballot paper, maballot paper apera. You understand? Some people might think that's normal. It's not, Ollah, because every polling station, you know very well that the polling station in my voters 3,000. You understand?
Yeah.
And it is the role and mandate of the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission to print ballots which tally with the voters at that polling station. And kashoma Ollah kuona polling station voter every registered voter ipapo. Saka kutoti hanzi ballot rapera. Saka you want to tell us that imimi ballot rapera pasati pato vota vanhu avasara muqueue. Mozovunza ballot na 2 a.m. Vachivota ichiendera mberi. Do you know how many people can vote in an hour, Ollah? In an hour, just as with our system here, you can have over 200, 350 or so people vote within an hour. We process. So if you deny people the right to vote for 6 hours, what have you done there? You've suppressed the outcome of that election, the outcome of the real outcome of votes from that election.
Yeah.
Because 6 hours could have meant over 3,000 or so people who have voted. So we witnessed this in numerous polling stations in this country.
There are concerns, Advocate, that CCC leaders made noise about rigging, but over no post-election strategy or action plan. Was the party caught off guard, or is there a bigger problem with the internal organization?
There was no problem with our internal organization. And I perhaps don't understand what that question seeks to demonstrate, because post the election, the strategy we undertook, we did a post-mortem of the election, of course, and we chose to take a stance, and the stance we maintain up to today, that this process is illegitimate because of these reasons. people might have expected for us to call for massive demonstrations and might have expected for us to call for a massive shutdown of the government and, have people fight and so on and so forth.
Yes.
And of course, that was a genuine demand. We went around the provinces to start organizing around a demand for a fresh election. But we also chose to allow democratic processes, regional processes to take place. That's why you realize that there was a report which the SADC Election Observer Mission gave, which spoke to the electoral process in Zimbabwe and clearly demonstrated that the electoral process in Zimbabwe was not free, fair and credible. So the expectation was that the regional body of SADC would come up to task. Not just speak to say this is a flawed process, but also follow up that report with clear resolutions on the Zimbabwean question. The dispute in Zimbabwe on the electoral process is what is leading to the problems we are facing today in the election, in the economy. The dispute over the unresolved dispute over the election of 2023 is what is causing you and me to struggle to get foreign currency in this country, struggle to get basic food supplies in this country. It's what is causing the country's external debt to balloon up to 23 billion, and we are not getting any relief. The internal debt is ballooning to over 80%, causing serious debt crisis in this country and hampering seriously on the economy. It's because we have an unresolved electoral process issue. So we expected the regional body to come and participate, because this is the job that we expect them to do as SADC, to come and say, okay, let's sit down on the drawing table. How do we resolve this conflict? How do we resolve this dispute? So there was deliberate efforts to engage from our party within the region and within the global body politic to engage and say, okay, come and resolve. Because remember, we said we believe in non-violent.
Did you get the results?
It did not. I'll be honest, it did not yield results. And we have learned our lessons from that. We have learned our lessons from that. So it did not yield results. But what it has yielded is an unresolved problem in Zimbabwe. What it has sustained is the unresolved electoral dispute in this country. Everything. If the electoral crisis and the electoral problem was resolved, we would have restored confidence in this country. The people of Zimbabwe would have had a fair chance at pursuing their dreams and pursuing their successes in life.
So, okay, I hear you. In the 208 seats National Assembly, ZANU PF holds 192 seats. The CCC holds 87 seats, roughly about 31%, and one seat is currently vacant.
Vacant, yes. 2 seats now.
How has Parliament functioned under this current administration? Do you feel opposition voices have been given room, to influence policy?
Opposition voices are the most competent voices that we have in this parliament. ZANU PF is full of incompetent people, I'll tell you. Very incompetent. But ZANU PF has a non-culture of resisting competence, a non-culture of resisting voices which proffer credible solutions to the economic challenges we have in this country. And we have tried to utilize Parliament as a platform to consistently demonstrate, what ought to be done in this country. And you see, Parliament is not only run during sittings; it's also run by committee, by way of committees. We have various committees where our opposition MPs sit in, and they contribute towards policy in the various ministries and so on and so forth. And I can guarantee you that part of the successful issues you see being run by this government are as a result of the infusion of ideas from opposition MPs who are there to proffer proper non-retentionist ideas, but ideas that maintain or that ensure the success of this economy. The challenges that we've had, I've touched on them as we started, to say we have a government which is focused solely and so much on power and its retention. To say, you know what, we can't allow reform because we will reform ourselves out of power. We can't allow these voices to shine because they would then cause us to create a credibility question and issue with the electorate. So there have been these challenges where Our MPs have been blocked from debating. Our MPs have been blocked from pushing motions. Our MPs have been blocked even from participating in some key international and regional exchange programs, so on and so forth, because these are decisions that are made politically.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what would you say are the biggest successes, so to say, and failures of this current government?
Right. I'll touch on its failures, because
Maybe let's start with the success.
I can't pin them in. To my shire, their successes. You understand? Because the things that they celebrate as successes, they're not successes to me. Because you can't tell me that a whole government of this nature, which presides over an economy which suffers from serious over 100% inflation rates, will celebrate takakuvakira roads akanaka, takakuvakira airport yakanaka. You understand? They suffer from, it's called a paradox of success. What is a paradox of success, Ollah? Where you think building good roads is an act of success when children are starving down there in Mberengwa, and when hospitals have no painkiller.
Isn't it done step by step?
No. You see, a government must measure its success based on the weakest of its economy, the weakest of its country. For us to say this government has been successful, we must go and measure the lifestyle and livelihood of the most weakest person, of the weakest person down in the village. Are they getting access?
For us to get to Mberengwa, we need a good road.
Yes.
To get there, so that we supply food and whatever, we need good roads. So maybe if they say we have completed this road,
economies are run. A well-run economy is one which is able and capable of delivering across sector. We judge the economy based on the livelihoods of people. Do you understand? So a priority deficit, prioritization deficit which this country suffers from, is what leads to us saying chakawaka airport yakanaka, but parirenyatwa inochengeta vana vedu vemuzimbabwe, inofanira kunge iriyo inorapa nekupodza vanhu vedu, haina kana mishonga, haina kana pekurara, vanhu vari kurara pamacardbox, vari kurara pasi. So it's difficult to talk of their successes because we don't measure success of a government based on those things.
Yeah.
We measure success of the government based on how they've managed to deliver on the pro-poor policies, deliver on the livelihoods of the people of Zimbabwe. Over 40% of people in Zimbabwe live in abject, serious poverty. Over 40%. Yeah. That's not a good sign, Ollah. So let me talk about the incapacities of this government. There's the issue of the glaring economic situation in this country. We have a ballooning external debt of around 23 billion. We have over 80% internal debt crisis. And we have over 107% inflation rate in this country. We have a currency crisis. We have seen how we've shifted the RTGS, ZIG, US dollar, and so on and so forth. The current crisis is just too much in this country because of the 87% of the GDP debt internally that this country suffers from. So that demonstrates to you an economy that is failing. There is no upward growth of this economy. Mutuli proposed at one point that there's going to be a 0.5% or 0.05% growth of the economy. There's not been any growth that we have witnessed in this economy. That's one aspect. This government has failed to deal with the corruption question. In fact, this is a West government in as far as corruption is concerned, even far worse than Mugabe's government. This is a government that's run through these cartels.
What are you doing as the opposition, to counter the corruption? Are you exposing it in parliament?
Yes.
Or not only in parliament. What else are you doing?
Well,
or rather, you are just tweeting and saying corruption. Is it going to stop the real corruption that's happening because you're tweeting?
Corruption, like I said, is being presided over by the Emerson Mnangagwa government. You heard at one point Chiwenga speaking of what he calls Jigananda. They are starting to acknowledge that this corruption scourge is the pain that this economy is suffering from. this is the corruption is being spearheaded by key government officials and key government functionaries or people related in one way or the other to the government of the day. So what must we do as a nation, Ollah? I believe that, number one, I said Parliament is a platform. It's one of the platforms through which we must speak against corruption, through which we must agitate for accountability from government departments. We have the Public Accounts Committee, which is tasked with the role of overseeing how government expenditure is done, I know how government is dealing with money disbursement issues and so on and so forth in the different government entities. So we are taking it with our MPs. We have taken them because right now, you see, Parliament is on break. As we resume Parliament, we have been caucusing with our MPs who sit in these key committees to say, you start pushing there for accountability on questions of tender processes, how certain monies were paid, of how Zeki said to have paid over 1 billion rands to some company linked to some guy who's dishing out cars in this country. So these are issues that we are going to deal with as we resume Parliament. And these guys know that we were aching to deal with these questions of corruption, particularly the ones that has been exposed, and that is clear evidence. We're going to take it up. But also in our own spaces, we have started a process which we will be rolling out of bringing to account through proper, legal mechanisms, ZEC, for example, over the 1 billion issue. We're going. You'll be hearing of it soon. We are launching a whole court and legal process against ZEC to say, no, how did this happen? You have a responsibility of accounting to the people of Zimbabwe and us as participants in the political election, in the elections, electoral process that took place in 2023. So, but the people of Zimbabwe in general have the role to also place a demand. I would say to the people of Zimbabwe, instead of thinking that it's only Gumbo and Chitimba and so who must speak out against these things. There are journalists who are doing a good job speaking out against corruption. There are people who are doing a good job on social media and so forth speaking against this corruption. But we must start going to our communities and packaging well and clearly that the problems that they are facing on the ground is as a result of Zigananda.
Okay.
The problem that they are facing on the ground is as a result of the corruption that we are, the illicit financial flows. But
Honorable, not only are you an MP, you're also the Shadow Minister of Justice, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs.
Correct.
How do you use your role to hold the current Minister of Justice accountable? And have you seen any tangible impact?
Well, we obviously the platform that we utilize for the question of accountability of the government ministers is Parliament. And yes, we have challenged the ministers of through our entire shadow cabinet of justice, as you said, Minister of Justice. I have stood up to deal with questions around the lawmaking process in this country. I've stood up to look. I also sit on a committee called the Parliamentary Legal Committee, which is a committee that speaks to or that interrogates the constitutionality of the numerous laws and numerous statutory instruments which are proposed by government. So I've utilized that platform also to challenge quite a number of legislation, challenge the PVO bill. We've challenged all these too. And the challenge, obviously, that we will get is a non-reformist government. Our job is to spotlight their weaknesses, to spotlight the weakness of certain policy propositions. But eventually, they can choose to ignore.
Okay.
Eventually, they can choose to say, well, utazvinzwa, but mchapinda mupawa.
Okay. How can the Triple C offer a clear alternative beyond criticizing ZANU PF? What does your party tangibly offer the struggling citizen?
I want to say, Ollah, that we must now start looking at alternative politics in this country and the outside the lenses of the Triple C. I say so because the future of this country now going forward is going to be dependent on how we create synergies around the various disgruntled groupings in our society and in our country. We must evolve above the Triple C blinkers and think of what convergence we can create for the citizens of this country against ZANU PF in the next election. So that process will require an all-stakeholder approach, to require the churches to come on board, to require the CSOs, even under the onslaught by the PVO bill, to come on board. It will require various youth groups to come on board. It will require various women organizations, women associations, and women groupings to come forward and say, we have one main objective. That objective is to transform the fortunes of our country. And we believe the fortunes of our country will be transformed through removing ZANU PF. So let's converge together.
So you speak of removing ZANU PF,
yes,
so that you guys get into power.
Yes.
But if Triple C were in power today, what would your first 100 days of action look like?
First, I must say, like I want us to recalibrate our mindset. I said the future of this country must be looked at outside the context of the Triple C. It must be looked at in the context of a citizens' convergence, where citizens come together outside party lines, outside to say the Triple C, and say, no. Let's come together and agree on what must be done to remove ZANU PF.
Yes.
It requires an all-hands approach, a coalition of sorts that will fight and remove ZANU PF from office. Once we have that government, we have removed ZANU PF and we have a government in office, we must then focus on our key propositions, which we have always spoken out to. Number one, agree to have a pro-poor budget. One which considers increasing the basic lifestyle, basic livelihoods of the common man and common woman in Zimbabwe, and create employment. We must look at what we do in the sector of agriculture to ensure that we create strong rural economies, empower various economies, various rural subsistence farmers to grow their farming and commercialize a lot of these now defunct farms which were grabbed during the Wando Minta affairs. We must look at improving on the question of land tenure. Yes, I see there's some attempts at that by ZANU PF now, but this is something that we have always proposed.
But are you happy with that attempt?
Well, the attempt is there. We're happy that there's an attempt.
Yeah.
We might have challenges with how it's being implemented and so on and so forth. We might have questions, but it's a start. We have always proposed that let's give our farmers power to borrow. Let's give our farmers power to grow, to be productive and restore Zimbabwe's jewel status.
Honorable, we only have about 5 minutes left, but I have a few questions to ask.
Oh, okay.
So maybe let's...
We're still getting 100 days. I was about to get in there.
Yeah, 100 days. I know it's a lot of time, but I wanted to just have a glimpse, So in May 2024, Sengezo Tshabangu appointed himself as the leader of the opposition in Parliament, a move that followed the cancellation of Jameson Timber's appointments this year in April. Sengezo Tshabangu won a High Court case that nullified his expulsion from the Triple C. The court ruled that the disciplinary proceedings against him were invalid, allowing him to resume his roles as the party's Secretary General. So, what are your thoughts on this development? Do you think it strengthens or weakens the opposition's position in Parliament?
First of all, Sengezo Tshabangu is not a leader of the Triple C that went to the election in 2023. He is an imposter. He is a deployee of ZANU PF in the disruption agenda of the opposition and alternative movement in this country. The court cases that they have been, dealing with Welshman Ncube exposes, and it exposes the fact that their claims are born out of an illegitimate process altogether. They speak of the 2019 Congress structures. They speak of a constitution which they've brought to court, which is the constitution basically of the MDC alliance, which is not the constitution which governed and governs the Triple C as it was constituted when we went to the 2023 general election led by Nelson Chamisa. The Triple C...
Did you guys have a constitution?
We did have a constitution. We've presented it in Parliament, in courts, in the courts. The constitution, which is totally different from the constitution that they speak of. We do not have a national council. We have a citizens' national assembly. So, Sengezo Tshabangu can fight all he wants with Welshman Ncube. They can fight all they want. But they know the real truth is that the Triple C that went to the election is not the outfit that they are trying to hijack from each other. So there's no question. And I must say, we already have court processes which are against Sengezo Tshabangu, which deal with the question of his authority and his mandate to represent himself as a leader of the Triple C. That court matter is pending. We will be going to PTC very soon, pre-trial conference, and to deal with, and to resolve that question once and for all. Because you cannot recall your MPs. If you were a true leader of the Triple C, why recall? And lose those seats to ZANU PF. You know, these are very simple things that the people of Zimbabwe have asked and have gotten the answers to. To say, you understand? Because where we recalled and went to by-elections, we've lost all those by-elections. So it clearly demonstrates the agenda behind Sengezo Tshabangu. He is not the leader of the Triple C. He was never a leader within our ranks.
How would you describe your personal and professional relationship with him, with Tshabangu?
I have no relationship with that guy whatsoever, you know. I have no relationship with him. I don't have any respect for him. I don't have, you know, any respect for his propositions. And I don't align whatsoever to what he has done. I think the history must judge him harshly. And the people of Zimbabwe must deal with him harshly.
Why didn't he recall you?
Why did not recall me? Well, I'm sure I was on the immediate list for recall, but now there was an interdict that we secured against him, an order granted by Justice Chitapi, which was interdicted him from making any further recalls until the question of his authority has been resolved by the courts. And that is the case that I said it's pending.
It's pending.
And
now.
I'm dealing with it together with our team of very sharp and key lawyers.
Okay. Honorable Gumbo, as someone who has been visibly active in opposition politics, how would you describe your personal and political relationship with Advocate Nelson Chamisa, both during his leadership in the of the Triple C and now in this new political season?
You see, I think people must know one thing about Chamisa. He is probably one of a few leaders in the east of this country who have given their lives or their all to delivering a great Zimbabwe, to delivering a prosperous Zimbabwe for the people of Zimbabwe. He's a selfless guy. He's a guy of integrity. He's a guy who, when he makes his propositions about why Zimbabwe must go, it resonates well and genuinely so with the people of Zimbabwe. You know, obviously every leader, you know, has their weaknesses, and his greatest capacity has been to accept where criticism is given and to silently work on evolving himself and strengthening himself in the areas of his weaknesses. So I want to believe that as we go forward, the embodiment of an ideal society and the embodiment of an egalitarian society, the embodiment of a successful Zimbabwe is Nelson Chamisa. And when we celebrate him and when we speak of him, let not people think that we are, you know, considering him a demigod of sorts. No. What we believe in him is the ethos that he represents.
But do you believe Chamisa, or rather, you know, the opposition, will ever rule this country?
We are going to. You know, I don't like the word rule.
Or lead.
Yeah, we are going to lead this country. In fact, we are leading this country. We are the leading party in this country. We are the leading alternative in this country. That's why people are coming, even when people complain against us. They're complaining against us because they are accepting that we are the leaders in this country. And these guys are the ruining party.
But I think they are complaining because they expected you to be the leaders, the leading party. But now, look.
So the question you asked, Ollah, are we going to lead this country?
Yes.
We are definitely going to lead this country. And I will say to you that the attainment of democracy in this country, our attaining of victories against the authoritarian ZANU PF regime has been incremental. Since the inception of the opposition movement, pushed through to 1999 when the MDC was formed, pushed through to the subsequent elections, you know, up to the time we had a government of national unity for the first time in this country, and witnessed serious improvements in the economy and serious improvements in the livelihoods of these people. It's been incremental since then. And we believe that despite the challenges that the alternative movement has faced, despite the challenges that we faced in this 2023 post-period election, we have garnered enough ground to successfully remove ZANU PF in the next election. And now, conversation that we are having, we must have with the people of Zimbabwe, is how everyone from the various corners of this country and the various groupings and various associations can come together and converge towards and around the idea that the same party which delivered to us independence will not be capable of delivering to us economic development. They are incapable. It's naturally impossible. These liberation war movements are incapable of ushering us into the dispensation and phase of economic development and economic success. That's why these liberation movements have been losing power across Africa. You go to Botswana, Duma Boko is now the president. You go to Zambia, the liberation movement has lost its power. You go to even our nearest neighbor, South Africa, ANC has started losing its power up to being forced into a coalition government. But in
Zimbabwe, you failed.
So in Zimbabwe, I'm saying the time is nigh. It's now our time. But all these efforts must be coordinated. All these efforts must come from various sectors and various groupings of people. Let's agree first that ZANU PF is incapable of resolving the Zimbabwean question. When we agree on that, let's then take away this very myopic approach to politics, which says, it must just be you guys, let's coalesce. I will move for what we call a coalition of forces to remove ZANU PF for purposes of ushering in democratic transition and consolidation and purposes of ushering in economic success in this country.
My last question to you, Honorable Gumbo, because of our time.
Yes.
I understand that there's a proposal to extend the presidential term, a term limit. So if it succeeds, if the ruling party pushes this motion through the parliament, what legal avenues do you think the opposition will pursue to prevent it from becoming a reality?
First of all, this motion, for it to be a live matter, it will have to come to parliament. They are going to try and push for it, and it is the responsibility of every Zimbabwean who has an elected official in their constituency to go and place a demand on your MPs to say, when you go to parliament, and this motion happens to come, you must resist it in debate and resist it in a vote. There is an attempt that we are learning of from ZANU PF to try and run away from the issue of a referendum. I must say, people of Zimbabwe, this is the time to start organizing ourselves towards protests across the country. Protests, why? Because we must resist.
That's why I asked you earlier, do you think protests will work? And sometimes when we see you guys organizing for these protests, sometimes it will result in violence, looting, all that.
We don't encourage violent protests. And at the same time, we don't encourage the police to say, when we organize our people and when our people go out to protest against the 23rd agenda, Mapurisa say even exercise their rights in accordance to the law.
To talk about the protest advocate, recently vageza vakaorganiza maprotest haana kuzobudirira sekutasira kwanga kwakaitwa nevazhinji nekuti zvanga zvakatarisirwa kana kuti nevanhu zvichaitika hazvinoda sei hazvina kubudirira ende vanhu vakabva valusa confidence as well. Now at the same time imimi muri kutiwo protest zvinhu zvakafanana neizvi vana vachisina ukatarisa paground chapo people are not really willing to participate in my protests akawanda.
I don't agree with you. I don't agree with that position. I think people of Zimbabwe want clarity on why they are protesting. In this instance, we are talking about the mutilation of the constitution of the land. In this instance of the 23rd agenda, we are talking about the extension of the present sufferings for another 2 years. The sustenance of the authoritarian ZANU PF regime. That, my friend, the people of Zimbabwe will protest against. Not violently protest. It's not a desire to unconstitutionally remove the government, but it is a desire to exercise a right provided for in this constitution of ours to protect it. It is incumbent upon every Zimbabwean to say, if you want to amend the term limit of the president, that by its very nature, it's a process which must come back to us as the people of Zimbabwe to vote yes or no through a referendum. If they resist a referendum, which is what we hear they are trying to do, the ZANU PF guys, the people of Zimbabwe have it upon themselves, and we will organize them ourselves as the leaders.
What if they? What if the people vote yes?
Well, if the people of Zimbabwe vote yes, that's the voice of the people of Zimbabwe. That's the voice of the people of Zimbabwe, Ollah. Because remember, what we are asking for is to say any attempt at changing the term limit of the president the people of Zimbabwe must have a say. Because when people of Zimbabwe went to vote in 2023, they voted for you for 5 years. So if you want an extra 2 years, come back to us, the people, and we'll remove you properly.
Okay, that's fine. There's been growing talk about people losing trust in the opposition, especially with some feeling that the party has failed to deliver on its promises. What's your take on this one? And how do you think the opposition can regain, the confidence of the people?
We must bring back the people aspect to our politics. When I say bring back the people aspect to the politics, how the opposition movement was formed around the period leading up to 1999, when I say the opposition, I mean the MDC in this moment. It was a convergence of people from all walks of life. You had the labor movement, you had the church, you had the civic society, you had the students who came together and agreed on a common agenda. So we must return our politics to that convergence mindset, where we must coordinate people around a shared common goal, an agenda to remove ZANU PF, because ZANU PF has become so incapable of dealing with the Zimbabwean question. So effectiveness will depend on you and me understanding and appreciating that we have a role to play in our own field, in where we are. You are a journalist. You have a role to start pushing narratives towards a new Zimbabwe. You have a role to start pushing narratives towards an egalitarian society. So even in the churches, start speaking. When you're a pastor, don't just speak. It's good to preach the Bible, but the Bible is a Bible of justice. You must start speaking on issues of justice and the rule of law in churches and so on and so forth, so that we conscientize and radicalize the people of Zimbabwe towards the next election. And that next election we must go to the next election not divided. Not divided. We must go to the next election as a unit to push out.
So are you putting everything in place to make sure that you guys be one party?
Yes.
No divisions.
Yes, we are putting things together, but processes that have had to happen for a reason, because we've got to prune insincere individuals from amongst ourselves. The journey to a new Zimbabwe is not a journey which will require insincere double dippers, two-timing people. We require people who are honest and who are people of integrity and who have a real heart to deliver a new Zimbabwe for the people in leadership.
That was MP, Member of Parliament for Hatcliff, CCC, Representative Agency Gumbo. On the spot, I hope you enjoyed the interview, and maybe matura one or two notes in his. Maybe you're also free to criticize or argue my points as well. And we're going to see more and more of these interviews on this platform. Thank you so much for watching. My name is DJ Ollah 7 Owen. We're signing out.